Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Foundations of Stocks and Options. You have made it back to another Class 1, but this time it's Class 1 of Level 3 of the Foundations of Stocks and Options. If this is your first time to Level 3, I want to welcome you. I'm thrilled to have you here with me, joining me tonight, and I'm sure that you're going to really enjoy your time in this program. This program is a little bit different than some of the others in the sense that we're taking a lot of that head knowledge, the analysis process, and all that stuff we've been learning level 1 and level 2, and we're going to start pulling it together into a set of actionable steps that we can use as we move forward. So here's our agenda for the day. We're going to do an introduction into level 3, which I'm kind of doing right now. Then we'll talk about some psychology as it relates to winning traders, and then we'll introduce you tonight into the trader conditioning process. Now, some of you may have been expecting Jeremy Newsom here. Of course, you guys all know that he decided to step down as a teacher here at Trade Smart, and it actually happened a little bit sooner than we thought. We'd planned on him being here through the end of the year. So because of that, I'm going to be with you this month, which I'm actually really looking forward to. I do have one kind of hang up here in that I had not planned for it. So I've got some schedules that I'm shifting around. And because of that, this is a special recording that I've done for you for tonight's class, which is being recast live to you as a live webinar. So I'm really excited to share it with you. And I'm looking forward to our time together. Now, I'll be here Wednesday night. I'll be here next week. And then as we get into Thanksgiving, and I'll remind you as we get closer, but the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, we're actually not going to have class that night. We will shift our classes all forward one class spot. So I'll remind you that every class before we get there, and then you'll be ready for that when the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we do not have class. Anyway, let's get on over here into level 3, and I just want to kind of remind you, if you can remember all the way back to level 1. Back in level 1, I said there was 3 cornerstones to building your trading fortress, and we were going to be working on building all 3 of them. The first one was having the right education. We said that you can't build your trading foundation if you don't have the right education. Secondly, it was the issue of planning and executing your trades. And thirdly, it was the mindset. As we look at the right education, we broke that down into 3 further steps. The market mechanics, or the mechanics of trading. We've learned about the analysis process, and then, of course, the strategies. Now, we've learned a little bit about strategies. We learned about some in level 1. We've been talking about them throughout. You've heard some of them in Power Traders and whatnot, but we're really going to start looking much deeper at the strategies here in level 3. But the mechanics of trading, and specifically the analysis process of trading, you've really learned a lot about over the last 16 classes. And now what we're doing is we're starting to apply that into what I'm calling the planning and the execution phase. Now, the planning and the execution phase is going to start with what I call the trader conditioning system. That's what tonight's class is about. Trader conditioning is a process that I created for myself, a process that would allow me to go back through the market conditions as they were and test my skills, build upon those skills as I move forward. What I needed is a way to kind of expedite rapidly get that conditioning into my system of what was going on in terms of building the skill set. And so, people often say the reason they're not a better trader is they don't have that experience. I wanted a way to get the experience. And the trader conditioning system is what I came up with for that. We're going to start working through that tonight. In addition to the trader conditioning system, the planning and execution phase is going to include writing and following your trading plan, and then, of course, measuring and adjusting your plan. We've talked a little bit about that in level 1. We'll talk a lot more about that here in level 3. And then finally, the mindset and the philosophy. We said if you're going to be successful, you've got to have a winning mindset. You're probably going to need some shifts in perspective, and I'm certain that all of you have had a lot of shifts in perspective. I'm just curious, how many of you here tonight can say for sure over the last 16 classes, there have been some things that you have shifted your perspective on? For example, for some of you, maybe it was the idea that you needed to look at fundamental analysis versus technical analysis. That's a major shift in perspective for many of you. Maybe it was the idea that options trading could become something that would be very valuable for you. And for some of you, that's a big shift in perspective. For some of you, the idea that selling short is not really that scary, and it's not maybe that that dangerous, but for a lot of you, it required a shift in perspective. A shift in perspective is almost always required when we're going to have a major breakthrough. And if you're going to be a successful trader, as you start to kind of build all these pieces together, a shift in perspective is certainly going to happen at many, many different levels. And then, of course, the last piece of that is the belief. Simply, you've got to believe. Now, in addition to these three key cornerstones to building your trading fortress, I said there's one more, and I used the analogy. I said that a building is incomplete if you've only got three cornerstones. And the fourth cornerstone is you. You've got to show up. You got to be here. You got to be committed, and you got to take the actions. I've often said goals without actions are just dreams, right? Well, that's true. Goals without actions are just dreams. We've got to put action behind our goals if we're going to take them to the next level. And I want to commend you. If you're here tonight, then you're here in level 3, and that means that you've stuck with it for a while. You'd be surprised how many people come into a program like this and they get a good third of the way into it and they're all excited, but about halfway through it they start to lose interest, and by the time you get to level 3, they're they've moved on to the next thing. They've gone and signed up for something else. Well, only those of you who are actually going to follow this thing through are going to start to see the results that you really want. So I want to commend you for being here, and I also want to encourage you to keep pushing forward here. We've gone through the hardest stuff in level 1 and level 2. Level 3 is where things start to really kind of come together in terms of laying all the pieces out, and then it's really just up to you to do the practice and to get really good at it. All right, so that's a quick refresher. I want to jump right now into kind of some of the psychology components as it starts to frame and set us up for the trader conditioning process. We've talked about the 3 cornerstones all throughout the Foundations program, looking at the right education and the planning and the execution and, of course, the mindset. But, some of these components we've kind of reserved to level 3 to really get into the details of it. And so as we think about the psychology of the winning traders, I want to come back to a question that we talked about right at the beginning, which is, why do we want to be successful traders? For each of you, you have a different reason that you really would call your compelling future or your driving force. For some of you, it's money. For most of you, it's probably something greater than money. And I don't know what it is for each of you, but you know what it is. And I hope that it's something greater than money, because if it's just money itself, that's probably not going to be enough to drive you to the end. In fact, a lot of those people that quit along the way, it's because they're driven by money, not driven by, really doing something greater than that. If it's something greater than money, then it ends up looking a lot like we want to be successful because of the doors it can open. It's usually not the money itself. It's the things that the money facilitates. And so I encourage each of you, if you've not already figured it out, figure out what's really driving you. And I also want to encourage you to seek to be successful traders because of the person that you must become in order to accomplish that. That's really what it's about. The money's going to follow. But, so many people come into a program like this and they think, if I could just make 10 grand a month, if I could just make 8 grand a month, or whatever the amount of money is that you're after. And, that's what's going to happen is you're going to get to that point, you make the money, and then you still find an emptiness. But if you'll find that compelling future that's greater than you find that thing that really drives you beyond that, then you realize that learning to be a good trader is really about creating a set of disciplines. It's really about developing yourself into a different person. There's 2 different types of people that are in a class like this. Some of you are very creative, and whenever you come into the market and you start doing the analysis, you are very creative about it, and you can see the patterns, and it's really easy to catch up with. But then when you get to the execution, you lack some of the execution. And you lack some of the key word here being discipline that it's required to be successful. You need to become a successful trader because of the discipline that it's going to make you learn to get into and to pull into your life. Now, others of you are extremely disciplined. Others of you are so A plus B equals C that you're scientific about it. And for those of you who are a little bit more like that, very, very organized, very scientific, becoming a good successful trader is going to require that you loosen that up a little bit. Because as I'm sure you've already started to see, technical trading is much more art than it is science. And that really messes with people who have more of an engineering background or maybe an accounting background. And, the irony is that the world of trading is kind of a great equalizer. I've met people who've been really successful as doctors, really successful as pilots, or other things that require a lot of really detailed retail organization, and then they come into trading and they're just pulling their hairs out. And they're saying, why am I so successful in this part of my life, but I can't be successful over here? And the reason is because you cannot approach trading the way you've approached everything else. Becoming a great trader requires that you develop some weaknesses in you that maybe you've never had the discipline to develop before. Again, if you're creative, it probably is going to look like developing a lot of disciplines that you've never had before. If you're very organized, it's going to be looking a lot like developing a lot of the creativity that you've maybe have never had in your life before. So I want to encourage you, keep pushing through this. As we start to get into trader conditioning, we start to pull all these pieces together, you're going to find that the person that you have to become to accomplish that goal of being a successful trader, it's really a valuable person. And I promise you're going to like yourself a whole lot more on the other side. Not that you don't like yourself now, but you're going to see that, once you push through this, you'll look back and you'll say, that was a decision that was worth making. All right, so with that kind of as a little bit of a pre-frame here, the truth is that whatever venue it is that we're successful in life, successful people have certain things in common. I'm going to throw some pictures on the screen here, and I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think that these people have in common? And don't tell me money, because immediately, some of you are going to say, John's going to say it, of course, money. All right, I know. Money is not the answer I'm looking for here. Just think about these people and ask yourself, what does Donald Trump and Warren Buffett and Derek Jeter and Oprah and Steven Spielberg, what do these people have in common? And if you know what they have, then you can feel free to type it in here. But, just think about it for a minute. Money is the result. Money is not the cause. And so I want you to start thinking differently about becoming successful at something and not look at the result. It's far too easy for us to look at people like this and say, they've got a lot of money. They're billionaires, they made the Forbes list. That's a result. People, when I was in my music career days, people used to always say, what's it take to be a successful artist? That person did it overnight. And the truth is, with very rare exception, most people do not become successful overnight. Most people spend 20 years getting there when no one knows who they are. And then one day, boom, it all happens and everything comes together. So looking at these people, what do you think that these people have in common? And I'm going to suggest to you that the thing that each of these people have in common, it's not race, it's not age, it's not the amount of money they started with. Some of them started with more money, some of them started with less money, some of them started with both parents, some of them started with no parents. I mean, these people are from very diverse backgrounds. They're from very diverse industries, very diverse professions, and yet each of them have acquired a large sum of money, they've been paid handsomely, and they've done something that successful people do. And that's the key right there. What these people have in common is they have done what successful people do. And what you're going to find is if you will do the same thing that successful people do, you will also find success. So I'm going to give you a formula for success. And here it goes, right? It goes just like this right here, if I can get it on the screen. You observe and study what successful people do. That's step one. And you do the same thing that successful people do. So first of all, we're going to learn how to be successful by watching successful people. Some people have said success leaves clues. That's a great statement. It's a great kind of thing to memorize about watching other successful people. I encourage all of you to spend time reading the Forbes list of the Forbes 400 richest people in the world. You want to understand what they did? Start learning about them. Study their lives. Read their biographies. Find out what successful people do. And then you do the same thing that those successful people do. And the result is you're going to have a similar success. Now, it may be different. It's not going to be exactly the same. I'm not going to say that if you guys go read everything there is to read about Warren Buffett, that you're going to be, the richest man in the world. That's probably not exactly the way it's going to play out. However, I can also say that if you go read everything there is to learn about Warren Buffett and you observe and study what he has done, and if you go out and do the exact same things that he has done, most of which is very well documented, then I'm going to suggest that you're going to have some similar successes, probably a lot greater than some of the successes you've had up until now. How many of you think that that would be a true statement if you just went out and learned everything that Warren Buffett has ever done, and you studied it and you observed it, you learned the lessons, you read the notes, you read all those annual reports and everything else, and you just started copying the guy? How many of you think that you'd be successful? Most of you would find a much higher level of success than what you've found up until now. You can pick it with anything. You can go observe what anybody who's been substantially successful has done. Start mimicking their behavior, start observing what they've done, study what they do, and then do the same things. And what you're going to find is you too will have similar results. Now, this is a really, really valuable formula for success. Now, here's the formula for not being success. The formula for failure, as I call it. You ready for this? You observe the successes of other people, and you believe that they're the same as you. If you do this, think about this. If you go out and you start watching what other people do, and you look at their results, and you think, hey, those people are just like me, and if I just go out there, I deserve the same thing. Well, you're going to be grumpy, you're going to be angry, and you're going to feel like a failure because you're looking at the wrong thing. This is far too often. I get this in business. I've had this from people that I've worked with over the years. I've had it from students. I've had it with people in the music industry. I've had it all my whole life. Anytime someone's successful, you're going to have these kind of things happen where people will show up. They see what you're doing. They might even work with you a little bit. They get to know you a little bit. And they say, oh, this person's just like me. I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to have the same success. And they wonder why they fall flat on their face. Because successful people have a different process. Successful people have certain rules that they follow. For example, successful people will typically, most of the time, have ethics that they follow that a lot of other people won't follow. Successful people will do things when other people are, out partying or watching television. Successful people will do things at night that are building towards their success. It's not what you see on the result that makes people successful. Understand the difference in a seed and a result. A result is the fruit that is born, but the seed is the work that had to be done to get there. And that's what most people who are not successful do not understand. The solid formula for failure is to look at the other people that are successful, think to yourself, they're exactly like I am, so I should be the same. And you miss the lesson that success is giving you in that moment. So here's a really valuable statement. Success is result. If success is a result, then it reasons that there must be a formula for creating success. You see, this is my philosophy. And I may not be the most successful person in the world, but I would say that I'm, relatively speaking, somewhat successful relative to the majority of the world. And this is my philosophy. You can go ahead and hear what I'm saying to you, and you can adopt it if you want to, but this is my philosophy. I believe that success is a result. When I put these classes together, I'm putting together the processes that I went through to learn how to trade. If you go through those processes, if you learn the trader conditioning process, I'm going to teach you tonight. If you'll learn that and you'll mimic that and you'll go through it, you are planting the same seeds that I planted. So it reasons that you will have similar results to the kind of results that I've had. Success is a result. And so if success is a result, then it reasons that there must be a formula for creating that success. A plus B equals blank, right? And so I said earlier that the formula for creating success is watch what other people are doing, do what they did to be successful, and you will probably have similar success. Now, let me take it a step further. And let's call this success as a result. And what is that result? The real result comes back to the old biblical law of sowing and reaping. You get what you sow, right? No, we do not reap everything that we sow. We only reap from what we sow. But if you remember the old parable, what does it say? It says that some seed fell on rocky ground and it did nothing, and some seed fell on fertile ground and it grew up. Far too often I think people lose their successes and the successes that are waiting for them right around the corner simply because they're spreading their seeds on rocky ground and they're not waiting until they can find the fertile dirt that they can plant their seeds in. They may be doing the right things, but they're doing it at the wrong place, and they just haven't been patient enough. Patience is truly a virtue. Patience is one of the key virtues of successful individuals. Successful individuals recognize what they want, and they go and they start planting their seeds, and they sow and they sow and they sow and they sow. And most of the seed at the beginning is probably going to fall on rocky ground, and it's probably not going to grow up. But eventually you're going to start planting some seeds on some fertile ground. And as we start to plant the seeds on the fertile ground, we're going to start to see successes. Success is the result of planting your seeds of success and nurturing them. How crazy would it be for a farmer to go out in the springtime, plant the seed, and walk away and come back in the fall and expect to have the best harvest of his lifetime? It would be crazy. I mean, it would take a true miracle. The farmer would never be so naive. The farmer, what does he do? He goes out, he plants the seed, they nurture the seed, they fertilize the seed. If there's not enough water, they water the seed. If nature gives them the water, then they're grateful for the extra water. And then what happens? By the time the fall comes, they can harvest their crop that they have been nurturing throughout the year. You know, learning to be successful in anything is just like that. Learning to be a successful trader, learning to be a successful musician, or learning to be successful in anything else in life is just simply the same process that we've had for many, however many thousands or millions of years, whatever, of the metaphor of the farmer. That's what I'm trying to say. The metaphor of the farmer. And we've had it, really since eternity here. However long man has been farming, we've had this metaphor. You plant the seed, you nurture the seed, and it grows into fruit or into vegetables or whatever you've planted. So if we go and we plant the seeds of successful trading, is it reasonable to think that if we go out and plant those seeds, that we can grow ourselves up into a successful trader? I believe that it's very reasonable to think that. So let's talk about some of the characteristics of success. And by the time we're done with this discussion, not only will you have hopefully a little motivational chat on being successful, but I'm also going to give you a process called the trader conditioning process. And I want to tell you this process that I'm going to give you here in a few minutes, it is so powerful. It can take anybody who's never been able to trade the market before, and it can condition them over a few sessions into successful trading. I really want to encourage you to do the process. All right, but let's talk about some characteristics of successful traders, successful people, which also is successful traders. Successful people study other successful people. You know, I read a statistic recently. This just came to me. It's totally random. But the average American, after they graduate high school or college, whichever level of education they go through, the average American, after they graduate from school, only reads one book on average over the next 17 years. That is an astounding statistic. I can't verify that it's true. Someone told it to me. I have not seen the study on that, but it is amazing to think that people would only read one book over 15 or 20 years of your life, and they wonder why they get stuck and they're not seeing the successes that they want. Successful people never stop learning, and they start by studying other people who have been successful. Pick anything you want to understand. I want to understand trading. Great. I'm going to go learn from some people who've been successful trading. What if you want to become a great marketer? You need to go study successful great marketers. What if you want to become a great golfer? Go study successful great golfers. Success leaves clues. And ironically, most people who've been really successful, if you're really nice to them, they'll probably tell you a lot of their tips and tricks, because most people like feeling like they're contributing. They like knowing that, hey, I'm helping somebody else get a little bit better. I mean, it really takes an arrogant prick to not want to share some of their tips and tricks. I mean, who's that mean? Just a few people. I've only heard of a few. And, they were mean before they were successful. They're the anomaly. Most people who are really successful enjoy sharing. So I would like to encourage you, find successful people in a field that you want to be successful in, and go talk to them and say, hey, what did you learn here? I got a specific question. Now don't be naive about it. Don't walk up and say, hey, how'd you become a great trader? That's a naive question. Ask an intelligent question. Ask something specific. Hey, how did you specifically get really good at interpreting candlesticks? If somebody asked me that question, I'd be happy to tell them exactly what I did. I was struggling through candlestick interpretation, just like many of you. And I went out and I made myself a cheat sheet. I made a cheat sheet of all of the candlestick patterns that I was trying to memorize. And I couldn't memorize them all, so I started doing the back trading process that I'm going to be teaching you about tonight. And I would just go through and I would, every couple candles, I'd say, is that a pattern? And I'd look at my reference sheet. And I'd say, oh, there's the pattern. Okay, there's the name of it. It's a bullish engulfing pattern. Okay, that's what that looks like. And I just drilled it over and over. That's all I did. Now, it's not necessarily a secret of what I did there, but most people wouldn't do that. And so what I've just given you is a tip of how you become a master of something, in this particular case, a master of candlestick trading. But my point is, whenever you find someone who's successful at something, don't be ashamed to go study them. Don't be ashamed to go ask them questions and say, hey, how did you learn this? What did you discover? If you will do that, I think you're going to be surprised at how many people are willing to go ahead and share with you some of their great secrets. Another characteristic of success is successful people realize that it all starts in the mind. This is such a big secret of success. It all starts in the mind. I don't mean it starts as a figment of your imagination. I mean it starts with a mental game. All of you know somebody, and every time you talk to them, they're just Debbie Downer. I mean, something's always going wrong. And if you talk to that person and they're just always unhappy and something's always going wrong, how successful do you think they're going to be? Probably not very successful because they're focused on all the wrong things. What if that person were to turn their life around and start focusing on all the right things? They were just focus on being grateful about all the great things that are happening. How different do you think their life would be? I'm going to propose to you that it would be radically different. Because successful individuals realize that success starts in the mind. It is a mental game. It starts with an attitude that says, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this. I'm going to be successful. And as part of that mind game, there's a couple of shifts of philosophy, one of which says, I'm going to acknowledge and admit that I have personal responsibility for whatever happens to me. Maybe I got stopped out of a trade. Maybe it was the market makers. I don't know, but I don't care. I'm going to take the blame myself. I realize that I set that stop. I probably set that stop a little too tight. I shouldn't be blaming the market makers. I'm going to take personal responsibility for myself. Every successful person that I've ever met, every person who is truly successful, recognizes and acknowledges personal responsibility for their entire life, even if they don't believe it's their fault. That is a clue. That is a key to success, taking personal responsibility. It's part of that mindset, part of the mental game of being successful. Now, in addition to studying successful people and getting the right mindset, taking personal responsibility, successful people have an attitude of no victims. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, how many people do you listen to? Something's always happened to them. I mean, politicians are the worst. How many times have you heard a politician and they're complaining and they're mumbling about what such and such Bob Schmo from Kentucky did? Whatever. They're always blaming other people and they're always the victim. Victim attitudes bring with it an entitlement attitude. It's that same attitude that says, hey, Bob over here, he's not any different than me. I should have all the successes he's had. And they fail to recognize all the things that Bob did when the doors were closed, when no one was paying attention. Successful people recognize that success starts in the mind. They take their personal responsibility, and they are not a victim of anything. If you're taking personal responsibility, you really can't be a victim. You really can't be. Because the person who takes personal responsibility, despite what happens to them, they recognize that this has happened to me for a reason. Either some things that I let happen or some things that I didn't do led this to happen, Or somehow I started this domino effect, and it led to this moment. I'll tell you a personal story. If you don't mind, I'll get off on a little tangent here. But, as you start to do more and more business, occasionally lawsuits arise. And unfortunately, I've had 2 that I've been part of, and I never enjoy them. But in both cases, it would be really easy to say, hey, this particular person brought this against me, and I can't believe that they're screwing me this way. And the first time it happened, that's kind of how I felt. But as I got to working on the case, and as I got to digging into it a little bit deeper, one day I had a switch. I had a flip in my mentality. In this particular case, somebody brought the suit against us. And I had a flip. I had a mental flip. And I remembered the day, and I said, this was a transaction that I did that I could have done differently. And as I got to thinking about that, I realized how that domino effect 3 years later came back to bite me in the butt, and it led to a lawsuit. When I had that shift in mentality, it was literally the next day that we were able to come to a settlement, and everybody walked away a winner. Everybody got what they wanted. But it had to come down to that point where you say, okay, I'm taking personal responsibility for this. Every successful person that I've ever met takes personal responsibility, and as part of taking personal responsibility, they get rid of the right to say, this is happening to me. I'm a victim. Instead, they say, this is happening for me. I wonder why. Another distinction of successful individuals is successful individuals don't just work harder, they work harder and smarter. Have you ever seen that book, The 4-Hour Work Week? It's kind of a dumb book when you think about it. I mean, if you follow his business advice, Timothy Ferriss is the author of that, and he's successful at his thing, whatever his thing is. But the 4-Hour Work Week is one of the dumbest ideas for a book that you can ever imagine. Think about this. If all my competition went out and said, I'm just going to work for 4 hours, I can beat them by working 5 hours a week. That's incredible. I mean, it's just built upon the dumbest idea. But here's the idea that it's built upon. It's built upon leverage. And leverage is a good thing. I'm pro-leverage. But successful people recognize, and here's the key here, successful people recognize that too much leverage makes you lazy. Now, there's a lot of people who work their butts off and they don't have anything to show for it. They work harder and harder and harder. You have a lot of people that are out there trying to work smarter, but they get lazy. The successful person works harder and smarter. Think about that. Think about that list of those faces that I showed you. Warren Buffett, Donald Trump, Oprah Winfrey. Some of the richest people in the world, and every one of them still has a job. For some of you, this is a valuable thing to consider because some of you have fallen into the trap of thinking if I just learned how to trade, I could just stop working. That may be your motivating factor, and you might need to dig a little bit deeper and say, what do I really want? Because the most successful people in the world work harder and smarter. Coming back to some characteristics of the most successful people in the world. They study successful people. They realize it starts in the mind. They're focused on personal responsibility. They have a no victims attitude, work harder and smarter, and they're determined to succeed despite the challenges. Successful people have philosophies that guide their steps. They guide their steps. And one of those secret philosophies, there's really two of them, but they come down to this little key that they succeed despite the challenges. And I want to give you these two secret philosophies that if you will adopt them and you will bring them into your life, you will be much better for it. Here's how they go. There's the philosophy of self-discipline and the philosophy of failure. Every successful person I've met has the same philosophy on self-discipline, and every successful person I've met has the same philosophy on failure. Let me share them with you. Self-discipline is doing what you need to do when you need to do it, regardless of whether it feels good or not. Whoa, think about that. How often has our culture and our society programmed us to do what we want to do when we want to do it because of the way it feels? But the miracle of self-discipline is a miracle that is as powerful as the miracle of compounding interest itself. Doing what you need to do when you need to do it, regardless of whether it feels good or not. That's self-discipline. That's why King Solomon, who's been considered by many to be the wisest man who ever lived, said that only a fool hates discipline. Successful people recognize the need for self-discipline, and they're willing to do what they need to do when they need to do it, regardless of whether it feels good or not. I'm teaching you this tonight for a reason. Because I'm about to teach you a process that is so powerful, it will turn you into a successful trader. It's a process called trader conditioning. And yet, less than 25% of my students, through the surveys that we've done, less than 25% of them say that they actually do the trader conditioning process. Even though, statistically speaking, it gives you more than 2 times the chances of being a successful trader. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's proven the trader conditioning process will help turn you into a successful trader. And yet less than 25% of my students do it. Why? Because it's not easy and it requires self-discipline. Something that successful people have, that successful people are determined to do. Now, there's another key philosophy that successful people adopt, and they live by it, and that's their philosophy of failure. How do you see failure? You see, most people see failure as an identity. Most people see failure as they've reached the end of the road. Most people, whenever they try something and it doesn't work, they turn around and they say, well, that didn't work. This is a scam. People sign up for a class and they take 2 or 3 classes and they say, that's not going to work for me. These people are scam artists. No. Those people just didn't try. People go sign up for a new diet program, P90X. They ordered it off television. Got it home and they saw those sexy people on television. They got their own DVDs. They started working out. 2 days later, they can't move. They're so sore. They put the DVDs on the shelf and they say, this thing doesn't work. No, the P90X would work just fine. You don't work. Yeah. Average people see failure as an identity. It's their end of the road. So the person who tries P90X and they give up, and I'm one of them, they quit doing it. They say, well, P90X doesn't work for me. It becomes their identity. Well, I wasn't meant to be a good trader. And that's just not who we are. And it becomes an identity. Successful people don't see failure that way. In fact, successful people don't see it at all. They don't even say the word failure most of the time. Successful people see failure as data. That's it. They simply see it as feedback in a process. You know, Thomas Edison created over 1,000 light bulbs before he came up with one that worked. Someone said, how's it feel to be such a failure? And he said that he hadn't failed. He just found 999 ways that the light bulb didn't work or whatever the number was. Successful people simply see failure as data. Napoleon Hill, one of the great inspirational writers of the 20th century, said that failure is a stepping stone on the road to success. You want to know what those successful people have in common? Those successful people have done what successful people do. They've learned to recognize failure as a stepping stone on the road to success. They recognize that nobody's successful without going through a whole bunch of failures. But they don't call it failure. They call it data. They say, I learned one way that this isn't going to work. Let's go try another way. You think Steven Spielberg hasn't had a few setbacks in his career? You think Warren Buffett's always perfect and he's never made a bad trade? You think Donald Trump is perfect? Derek Jeter can hit only 3 out of every 10 at-bats, and he's considered one of the greatest hitters in baseball. You hit 30% of the time in baseball, and they consider you a great. Some of you have been holding yourselves to a standard that's impossible. Some of you have been thinking to yourself, if I could just make 9 out of 10 trades, I'd be a good trader. You realize that's an impossible standard? When you hold yourself up to perfection, it's an impossible standard. You're not trying to get better. You're trying to be a glutton for punishment because somehow you've fallen in love with that identity of saying it doesn't work for you. You know, a really great trader, if you can get to 5 and 6 and 7 out of every 10 trades, you're a really great trader. You need to be happy with that. I lose money all the time. Of course I lose money. I'm human, just like you're human. And yet what most people want is they want to go out and they want to be a perfect trader, not a great trader. Perfect traders don't exist. But there's a lot of great traders, and they go on to make a lot of money. As we get into the trader conditioning process, I want to encourage you to adopt some of these philosophies of successful individuals. The philosophy of failure. Failure is not the end of the road, and it's certainly not an identity. It's just data. What works and what doesn't work. Your philosophy of self-discipline. Being willing to do what you need to do when you need to do it, regardless of whether it feels good or not. And your philosophy of continuing to constantly be studying other people who've been successful. If you'll do these things, you will find that success is leaving clues that you can pick up and you can piece together and you can put them into your life. And on the other side, it's about the person that you must become. Who is that person that you must become? I don't know. Each of you are different. John, Terry, Robin, you're all different. Every one of you have different weaknesses that you need to work on. For some of you, you need to work on the miracle of self-discipline. For some of you, you need to work on the miracle of creativity, being a little more flexible. Some of you just need to work on the discipline of studying successful people. Some of you need an attitude change. Some of you need to check your attitude at the door. Stop saying that the world's happening to you, that you're a victim, and that it's hard. Get over that. Take personal responsibility and say, you know what? I'm going to go do this thing. If other people have done it, I can do it too. To be a successful trader, we must learn the philosophy of success. To be a successful trader, we must do what other successful traders have done. It means that we're going to have to get self-discipline under control, and we're going to have to get failure under control. And I bring these two up specifically because for those of you who are more scientific, for those of you who have the more engineering mind, failure is not an option to you to the point that there's zero tolerance. And that's not reality in the world of trading. If you're a doctor, there's zero tolerance. You can't crack a chest open, do heart surgery, and get 4 out of 10 of them right. You're killing 60% of your patients, and that's not going to work. I get that. In trading, get comfortable with that. Likewise, if you're super creative and you're used to being a little loosey-goosey, when you come to trading, you're going to have to start getting some disciplines that you've never had in your life. Get used to it. It's all about the person that you have to become. And if you will take the time and you will be self-aware enough to recognize your shortcomings and to put the time in, the disciplines in, to become great, guess what? On the other side is a reward, a person that you must become, a reward that you will look back at this season of your life and you'll say, that was one of the greatest decisions I ever made in my life. Not because of the money that followed. The money will follow, but because of the person that you became. The money will come, the money will go. The person you are is the person that you will take with you for the rest of your life. That's why it's worth doing the hard work. So let's talk about that. How do we do the hard work of successful traders? I want to introduce you to a process that I call trader conditioning. This is a process that I created back in the early to mid 2000s. We're coming upon probably 10 years now. I probably really honed it in around 2006. So, about 8 or 10 years ago. The trader conditioning process is a process that you can walk through that will translate your head knowledge, also known as your book knowledge, into a skill set that will allow you to trade the markets efficiently and effectively. Now, what does that mean? Well, you've been learning about the market. We've come in here for 16 classes, and you get your notebooks out, and you launch your webinars, and you get your computers up, and you start taking your copious notes. And you're learning about the market as you listen to me or one of the other teachers talking at you. And I try to engage you. I ask you questions, and some of you type in responses, and some of you don't. But you're learning about the market. That's head knowledge. Head knowledge is extremely valuable. And yet, head knowledge does not mean you can do anything. Think about it. I know a lot about plumbing. I'm a horrible plumber, but I know a lot about it. I know that the red knob gives me hot water and the blue knob gives me cold water, and I